to Money Talks. I'm Genevieve Westcott with your latest financial news from across New Zealand and around the globe. Coming up, European woes. France and Greece throw out the old politicians and vote in the new. What's it mean for those critical austerity measures needed to resolve the European debt crisis? Political uncertainty means nervous markets around the world tumble, and so does our dollar, down below 79 cents against the greenback. How long can our exporters and farmers count on this? And Sinlay does a deal across the ditch, supplying colostrum to Australia for new human immunity products. Joining me now is Rural Economist James Shortall and Federated Farmers CEO Conor. And let's talk about what's been happening over in France and in Greece. Big elections on the weekends. They don't like the austerity measures. What do you make of it, James?
Well, of course they don't like them because it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt the public. And they've voted in favour of all those issues, I think, over the weekend. And already these parties have campaigned on the basis that they're going to go back to the table and renegotiate, look at some different alternatives. So that doesn't spell good news for austerity, doesn't spell good news for markets in general, I don't think. Angela
Merkel is a pretty tough cookie, of course, running Germany. How do you think she's going to take the request to perhaps sit down at the table now, Conor, and renegotiate how they're handling the sovereign debt crisis?
Well, I think she's already said that she's not going to take it too well. I mean, the fundamental problem that they've got over there is that they've lived beyond their means. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. And the voting public don't like that, but that's the reality. That's what we here in New Zealand have got to look out for. In terms of Britain, they're not doing so well either. They're into a recession now. James, how is that going to affect the rest of Europe, do you think, as the weeks and months go by?
Well, I think the greater issue is going to be looking a couple of years ahead. If we do see some fundamental changes happening in some of those major European countries like France, from changes in policies, then they're going to get themselves further into debt. They're going to have increased spending, and the cycle's just going to get larger and larger and for longer and longer. So I think they are the greater issues that we're going to be facing, and I don't think a lot of people are going to like it. The euro's not going to like it in terms of currency, but markets in general are not going to like it either.
Yeah, markets are still very nervous, and I saw this morning that the markets around the world are way down. Is it going to get worse before it gets better, Conor?
I think it will, and simply because the problem is debt, and there's a bunch of people who think that the solution is even more of it. So it's a bit like giving an alcoholic another bottle of whiskey. It doesn't actually solve the problem. So until they face up to that reality, I think we're going to continue to see problems. But one of the good things, Genevieve, is for New Zealand, we actually trade a lot less with Europe now than we have over the last 100 years. So our exposure to the mess that's Europe is a lot less now than what it used to be.
Even so, we look to places like Asia, particularly China. We see that growth is now down from 10% to 8%. Some say that's great, it's still growth, but there's a marked slowdown. Is that going to affect us in the rural sector?
Well, it is affecting us where we're seeing commodity prices just come off a bit. You know, we've seen our lamb and beef prices come down a bit. We're seeing our payout, going forward is likely to come off a bit. So, yes, it will affect us.
Okay, let's talk about the dairy payout, for example. One analyst this week was picking it could be $5.80. James, what is your reaction to that?
I think it could be even lower than that.
You do? How much lower?
I mean, we could be talking a mid-fives payout here. I mean, it's really difficult to tell because there's a huge amount of factors that are underway here. I think there's no question that's going to have a 5 in front of it, but I'd probably set my expectations a little bit lower at the moment just to see how things are going to phase out over the next few months. I mean, the dollar's having a huge impact. We've seen commodity prices come off. The difference this year, I think, is that we're not seeing the same amount of volatility. The dollar has been remaining relatively high, and it could even go higher from here. Who knows? And one thing we can count on, I think, Conor, and good news for the farmers, interest rates remain low. Could go even lower. I see SBS yesterday dropped the rate.
Yeah, and that is good news because we've got a lot of debt out there. We've got $47 billion of debt, and look, over the last couple of seasons, farmers have paid off a bit of debt, which is great. But there's still plenty there that needs to be paid off, particularly some concentrations in the dairy industry. If the payout does come down, people are going to have less money to pay that debt, and you might see some people looking to exit the industry.
Sheep and beef markets, of course, and prices there not good, Conor. What are you hearing from farmers around the country?
Oh, look, well, we've had Federated Farmers set a target of $150 a lamb for mid-season lamb. This last couple of years, some people actually achieved that. That's a good level of income for a sheep farmer. Now that's come off quite a bit. You know, we've gone from $8.20 a kilo down to about $5.80. That's a significant drop, and we hope that it bounces back. We think it might be just a bit overdone.
Beef prices are also tracking down, James. What's the latest?
Well, I mean, the US market, our biggest market, is still looking not bad. I mean, prices have come off since you know, over the past couple of months, but and there's every indication that we're going to start to see the US herd rebuild over the next couple of years. We won't see those factors come through for maybe 2 to 3 years here at home in New Zealand, but the US market's still looking okay. I guess the real issue right now is the currency, and that has been impacting on schedule prices here at home, and farmers are suffering a little bit under that, I think.
Interesting that I saw that Canterbury's Sinlay has now done a deal to sell colostrum across the ditch in Melbourne. Apparently they're going to make some kind of human immunity product from it. Is this the way more and more of our agricultural products should be headed, Conor? Well,
look, we can only produce so much from the farmland that we've got, and so we need to maximise the value of that. So if they're selling colostrum, which is a high value product, that's great. The more of that we can do, the better. And you know, human nutrition, eating for health, is very definitely a trend that we're seeing across the globe.
Let's talk a little bit too about the pork industry here in New Zealand. It could be in trouble.
As I understand it, you can import in cooked pork, but you're not allowed to import raw pork. And now they're going to be able to import that uncooked pork, and the pork farmers are actually a bit concerned about that because they're worried about the disease coming in with that. And so there's been quite a process that MAF, or now the Ministry for Primary Industries, has gone through, and they say scientifically that there's a low risk. The pork farmers have challenged that, and from their perspective, unfortunately, they haven't been successful.
Thanks, gentlemen. Coming up after the break, New Zealand King Salmon CEO plays hardball and uses an Auckland PR company and YouTube to win the hearts and minds of New Zealand in his bid to get a massive expansion for his business in the Marlborough Sounds. But first, answer this in our Farmers Facts and Figures quiz. How much have average dairy product prices fallen over the past 3 months? Welcome back to Money Talks. Just before the break, we asked you how much have average dairy product prices fallen over the past 3 months. 17%, thanks to surging global supply and renewed worries about the global economy. We're back now with the CEO of New Zealand King Salmon, Grant Rosewarne. You're in the fight of your corporate life right now, trying to expand your business down in the Marlborough Sounds, and you've taken a direct action campaign to YouTube, telling people why it's a good idea. What kind of reaction have you had?
Very positive reaction. So we think we've got a great story. We're not opposed to using new media, to the internet, to explain that. So we're delighted with the reaction that we've had to the YouTube video, and also amongst the wider community. We've got really good support for what we're doing. But
you've got a lot of people that don't think it's a good idea, including your own district council. How'd you take that rejection?
We were surprised about that because we know Alistair Salmon, he's the mayor. We've got a good relationship with him. We were somewhat surprised this far down the track for him to come out in opposition. However, we're working our way through that. But we think we have the support of the majority of the community. Right now, we're going to take a look at your YouTube campaign, and the viewers can see for themselves. Okay. This is the Marlborough Sounds. It's where we've been farming king salmon for a quarter of a century. It's one of the most beautiful places in New Zealand, and we enjoy it like everybody else does. Although it's a beautiful place, it's not a national park. It is a multi-use area. There's lots of land farming, mussels being grown, forestry. There are 2 significant towns, lots of batches, and of course, it's where we grow most of our salmon. I've been Chief Executive of New Zealand King Salmon for 2.5 years now, but the business itself has been operating here for 25 years. Recently, we were identified by the Global Aquaculture Performance Index as the #1 environmental producer of salmon in the world. What we produce here is sustainable and renewable, and our success is based on maintaining the beautiful environment of the Marlborough Sounds. We have a great environmental record, and we're proud of it, and we intend to keep it that way. We want to grow our operations here in the Marlborough Sounds. and it certainly got the local community talking. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, of course, but when some of that is based on emotion and not fact, we feel that we need to answer that and set the record straight.
Grant, you are the biggest aquaculture producer in New Zealand. How big is your company? How many people work for you? Give me the gears.
So we have a turnover of $115 million New Zealand, of which about 60 million is export. We employ 470 odd people, mainly in the top of the south, but also in Australia, Japan, the US, some around Christchurch. We do something very special though. We grow king salmon. The rest of the world grows Atlantic salmon. We have unique intellectual property that enables us to go to the world with a premium branded food delicacy, and no one else has been able to copy that. So it's a rare opportunity to really add high value and bring in strong export dollars for New Zealand.
Now, this company has been in business for about 20 years, correct?
Yeah.
And it's taken you about 15 years to really master your intellectual property when it comes to king salmon.
Yeah.
You produce 55% of the world's king salmon, am I correct?
That's right.
Yep.
So New Zealand produces about 85% and our company 55%. So New Zealand dominates the king salmon segment of the market, but salmon's a huge category around the world, and we're right up the top of that food pyramid, producing a premium product, and we can do it without too much fear of being copied from elsewhere, because we have unique intellectual property that enables us to farm a premium fish every day of the year.
Last year, the New Zealand government made it pretty plain that they think aquaculture is the way to go, and they gave a lot of money to the business, to the industry. They really want you to succeed. What's at stake if you don't get this expansion for your company through?
Well, king salmon require very specific environment to grow. So there's nowhere else in New Zealand we can go. So there's really only the Marlborough Sounds. There are other producers in other places and they're already taken up. So if we don't get this expansion, and we're talking about, Genevieve, a tiny amount of space.
Wait a minute, you've got 5 farms now.
Yeah.
You want another 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite substantial.
Yeah, but when you talk about a farm is 1 surface hectare. There are 150,000 surface hectares in the Marlborough Sounds.
How many do you want?
We'd like 12, so 17 in total. So mussels, great industry, but they've got 2,800 surface hectares. We've got 5, and we'd like 12 more, and that's 17 in total. Not 17,000, just 17.
Environmentalists say that what you're doing is going to harm the sounds. What's your response to that, Grant?
Well, we're already in the sounds. We're growing about 1/3 of what we aspire to grow long term. We haven't had any environmental problems, so nobody can come onto this program and show you a picture of any damage. We do have an effect immediately below our farms, and we acknowledge that.
What kind of an effect?
Well, the faeces from the salmon comes down, it settles on the seafloor. We keep the number of salmon in balance with the number of native worms and microorganisms under the farm. They break down the faeces from the salmon, and we control it in that way, and that's how we're very sustainable. We've farmed some of those sites for 20 years with no wider effects on the sounds. We can demonstrate that.
The group, of course, Sustain Our Sounds, the environmentalists, claim that if you get the go-ahead, you're going to turn the sounds into a cesspool. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, there's 150,000 surface hectares. We aspire to 17, so we're tiny. We manage it in the way that I said, keeping the number of native worms in balance with the number of fish. They break everything down. And then what's ultimately released from a salmon farm is tiny compared to what comes in naturally from Cook Strait. So Cook Strait has a lot of nutrients in it. The Sounds is lower. There's continually nutrients coming in. What we add to that is we can't measure it. So if we test upstream versus downstream, we can't tell the difference. So that says to me we're having a very small effect. How
critical is the expansion plan to the local economy? What is the ripple effect if you're able to expand? What's it going to mean?
Yep.
In terms of jobs, in terms of money,
yep.
In terms of what you're going to feed into the New Zealand economy?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll start off, Genevieve, with just a staggering number. So from 1 surface hectare, you can generate $23 million worth of revenue. So that there's no other agricultural industry that can come anywhere near that. So we produce a massive amount of revenue from a small amount of space.
But wait a minute, 51% of your company is owned by the Chinese, correct?
Malaysians, yeah.
Malaysians, I beg your pardon. So how much of that money that you make every year actually stays here in New Zealand?
Yeah.
How much goes offshore?
Well, the vast majority has always stayed here. So this Malaysian company saved the industry, so nobody wanted to invest many years ago. They put capital in when nobody else would do so. Over the years, it's got up to 49% New Zealand ownership now. I expect it long term to go further than that. So this is a real success story about foreign ownership, starting at 100%, decreasing but saving the industry. So, and most of any returns that we've made, well, first of all, there's a 49% that stays in New Zealand, and the rest has really been reinvested in other New Zealand industries anyway. So very little has ever left the shores of New Zealand, but we've got, got a whole industry as a result of that investment. So that's been great.
In fact, as I understand it, the demand from the world is so great for what you're producing, you can't get enough salmon at the moment. So what are you doing about that?
Well, all sorts of things. So first of all, we've got this process with the EPA to try and get more space.
The Environmental Protection Authority.
That's right. That's the body that looks at projects of national significance. So we put this project up. It was judged by government to be of national significance because of what we can generate. We think we've got a great case, but you have to be able to prove that. So we've recruited all the best experts. Not to say what we want, but to say, what is the situation economically, environmentally, socially, what's the effect on marine mammals, what's the effect on the seabed, all of those things. That's why it's cost $6 million. And then we put that up saying, this is brilliant for New Zealand. We're doing all the things central government wants. High value added, using a small part of the environment, a low localised environmental effect, big economic spin-off. They're all the things that New Zealand aspires to do, and we're doing them. So we want to leave no stone unturned to ensure that we get those 12 surface hectares we're after.
What happens if you don't get it?
Well, we'll be stymied as a company. We won't be able to go anywhere. We'll only have to grow through value. We can still grow through value by smoking salmon. We do that now. But the big opportunity will be foregone. We will actually probably turn into an importing company as well. So we would have to probably import salmon to supplement what we already do.
Were you surprised at how tough the battle has been to get your case across the line?
Well, I'm surprised at the rhetoric out there and it being so, well, not being based in fact. That has taken me by surprise.
Grant, I appreciate your time. I expect you to come back when we have a decision. The decision is expected in December?
That's right. That's one of the good things about the process. We have a known result. One way or the other, we'll know if we've got a future in December.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Coming up after the break, Future Proof on the highways and byways of the economic world as our three experts point out what's coming up. But first, answer this in our Farmers' Facts and Figures quiz relating to our earlier discussion about pigs. How much money will be lost from the wider economy, according to the pork industry, for every 1,000 tons of lost pork production? The answer when we return. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Money Talks. Just before the break, we asked you, according to the pork industry, how much money will be lost from the wider economy for every 1,000 tons of lost pork production? $7.3 million. And now it's time for Future Proof. What's coming up for our experts? And I wonder, do you gentlemen have any questions for Grant about his salmon company?
Well, I guess the obvious question is, why aren't you going for more space in the sounds?
Well, we need to live in the environment where we operate. We'd like to be highly regarded. We want to use the minimum resource to create the maximum value. So we think we need all 9 of those farms. That's basically the 12 surface hectares. But we think there are other uses for the Marlborough Sounds for the other 150,000 surface hectares, and we don't want to impinge on that.
Now, this is a privately owned company, correct?
That's right.
Is there any thought about being listed on the stock exchange?
That would be our long-term aspiration, and I mentioned we're increasingly New Zealand owned. If that were to happen, that would obviously become a very high percentage. So that's an aspiration we have for the future.
Now, James, one of the Green Party members thinks that marine farms should be ruled like farmland by the Overseas Investment Office. Currently, companies like yours can pretty much do what they want, correct?
Well, not exactly, Genevieve. What I would say is we have a very weak property right. It's so weak, it's almost not a property right, and therefore it shouldn't come under those strict criteria about overseas ownership, because you're not really owning anything. You've got a temporary use of a public resource, which is a very low level of ownership.
That's a good argument, but let's go back to James. Do you think it's fair that marine farms come under the same rules as, let's say, farmland?
Well, I guess it comes back down to what do they own? I guess they own a consent to farm in a particular area, and they'll own some assets that might be sitting on that on that public land. So, how do you govern that? I guess is a good question, and I'm not too sure whether perhaps there may need to be some changes to enforce them different, to make sure there's not a huge amount of overseas investment coming into that, or overseas ownership coming into that sector. We want to promote New Zealand ownership of those assets, but you know, probably recent experience around the OIO and land sales has been hasn't particularly been of great benefit in some areas, I would say. So I would be reluctant just to say let's go and throw it all in there.
Conor, I wondered, from a farmer's point of view, when you listen to the debate and the controversy raging around whether or not now to expand Grant's company, does it make sense to you? Can you see both sides, or is this a no-brainer when it comes to growth and profit?
Well, look, in farming now, we have a lot of regulators now wanting to have a say about what farmers can and can't do on their farms, which they do own, and wanting to put restrictions on, you know, fertiliser inputs, stocking rates, that sort of thing. So we understand the environment that King Salmon is in. But on the face of it, as the facts as we understand it, if you can get $23 million of revenue out of 1 hectare, you know, you would like to think that perhaps a bit more than 12 hectares would be used for that, because that's a lot of jobs in the local economy. And if we're going to catch up with Australia, we need those sorts of investments. You know, it's a bit of an indulgence, isn't it? If you're sitting on the sideline saying you can't do stuff, and then you complain that the local hospital hasn't got enough beds. You know, there's a bit of a trade-off here, and if New Zealanders want to maintain a first world standard of living, they've just got to accept that there's going to be development and that there has to be growth.
And speaking of growth, in the area where you are, young people are leaving in droves, correct? There aren't that many opportunities. What else can they do if they're not working for a company like yours?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at Norway, a first world economy, as Conor talks about, great environmental record, great social fabric to the society. They developed salmon farming as a employment opportunity for the rural areas. It's been a huge success, and it could be so in the Marlborough Sounds also.
I know that the government put a lot of money into primary growth partnerships, PGPs, and a big chunk of that dough went into aquaculture. Do you think that was money well spent?
Well, time will tell. Obviously, from the pastoral sector, we want as much resource put into our sector as possible, so I guess that's at the expense of other sectors. But you do need to invest in innovation and in science. And our whole pastoral farming and also our aquaculture is at the forefront globally because we've invested in the past. If we stop investing now, we're just simply going to fall behind. So it's absolutely critical that both the government and industry invest in science and innovation.
And I think it's also critical that all of the primary industries work together a little more closely. Now, I'm getting the feeling that the farmers are kind of off in one area, aquaculture off in another. Should there be more of a marriage, do you think, so that you're more of a united front, if you like?
Yeah, look, we're all in the same game, and that's harvesting the environment on a sustainable basis so that we can provide jobs for the rest of New Zealand. The more aligned we can be, great.
And we would see it the same way. We have many common interests. You know, we would like to establish a feed mill here. If we can get to scale, we could have a feed mill. All the inputs could come from New Zealand. That would be great.
What do you think about that, James?
I mean, I'm very positive about aquaculture. I mean,
how come?
Because it's a very efficient way of converting protein into better protein. It's a fairly efficient way of utilising resources. It's a way of expanding the New Zealand economy beyond our existing means, and it's a high value product, and it's a product that's growing in demand, and it's growing demand in the countries that we want to expand in. They already eat a lot of fish products and things like that. So, I think it's a great way for the New Zealand economy to expand in general, and I'm generally pretty positive about growing it. So, I think I'm supportive of these sorts of ideas.
Thanks to my guests, Grant Rosewarne, Conor English, and James Shortall. Be sure to check out our website. Meantime, do you know what day it is on Sunday, guys?
Mother's Day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, only one guy answered. Oh, yeah, you do have mothers, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just checking. How about you, James? I'm not so sure. You do have a mother? Okay, good stuff.
He's got two fathers.
He's got, okay. Well, it is Mother's Day on Sunday, and don't blame your dog if you come up empty-handed.
Hey guys, about to deliver my mom's Mother's Day present, and my dog is going to deliver it for me, so let's do this.
Aww.
Take it, no.
Good boy. Oh.
Was the gift card in there?
Keep the faith. See you next time.